Speaker, thank you for giving me opportunity to contribute to this bill. As you know, Speaker, I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and I was listening to the Majority Leader advising us on the timelines when we need to submit some of the reports. I want to confirm to you, Majority Leader, that there was a retreat, a report writing retreat this weekend, and there are some of those reports that are ready. The challenge we've had in the committee is a challenge that you are aware of as part of the leadership of this House, that some of the entities, the governors especially, some of them, not all of them, some of them have refused to appear before the Public Accounts Committee and the Public Investments Committee. We are happy, Honourable Speaker, that not all governors have fallen into that bad habit. In fact, today the Governor for Siaya, the Honourable James Orengo, appeared before the County Public Investments Committee, and we processed 2 county assemblies, Honourable Speaker. The County Assembly of Kakamega, which is one of the few assemblies we noted as a committee that have also already considered the Auditor General's report and have tabled a report in the House that has been adopted. And we also had the County Assembly of Muranga appearing before us this morning. So we are doing our best. And Marsabit, yes, and Marsabit, I'm being reminded by the Vice Chair. We are doing our best to be able to beat those deadlines, and the House will be more than happy with the reports that we will present. Honourable Speaker, there are governors who think that by refusing to show up that the work of this House will stop. We will continue with our work, we will make recommendations, we will come to this House to defend those recommendations, and we are hoping that the House will adopt the recommendations that we will make. Speaker, whenever a bill is before us in the House, I always go straight to the objects for which the bill is proposed. There is usually attached to the bill a memorandum of objects and reasons. And Honourable Speaker, when I went through these proposed amendments to the Public Audit Act, that is a bill from the National Assembly, you will see there in the memorandum of objects and reasons that the purpose of this bill is to amend the Public Audit Act in order to align it with the Constitution following a declaration issued by the High Court in the case of Transparency International versus Attorney General and the Auditor General as a first interested party, Africa Center for Open Governance, and there are a few other parties there, petition number 388 of 2016, declaring certain sections of the Public Audit Act to be unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, I have printed out that specific judgment that was delivered on the 16th day of February 2018 by Justice Mwita, and I will be making reference to that particular judgment extensively, Honourable Speaker, because the memorandum of objects and reasons for the amendments that are being proposed states that it is in order to bring the bill in conformity with the judgment of Justice Mwita. So, Honourable Speaker, if we want to really believe that this bill is supposed to respond to this judgment, it is important to know what the judgment was and the reasoning of the judge in declaring certain sections of the Public Audit Act as unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, if you skip to if you skip to paragraph 76 of the judgment, this is where the judge turns to answer the issues raised in the petition. And Honourable Speaker, the first issue that was raised in court was that subsection 2 of the then section 4 had defined the Auditor General as a statutory head, which in ordinary circumstances, in the wisdom of the judge, reduced a constitutional office, because we know the Auditor General is a constitutional office, it's one of those independent offices under the Constitution, to a statutory one. So therefore, Honourable Speaker, if you want to see the response in the amendment, we must have an amendment that cures the problem that the judge pointed out. And therefore, Honourable Speaker, when you go to the amendment that touches on section 4.2, you will see here, Honourable Speaker, that what the National Assembly has done is to change the words statutory head and replace those words with accounting officer. Now, I have a problem with that, Honourable Speaker, because if you listen to the reasoning of the judge was telling the National Assembly or the petitioners the respondents in this particular place, that the Constitution has already defined who the Auditor General is. It's a constitutional office, so that you don't need to add any other terms when describing that office, that we already have a constitutional definition with the responsibilities of that particular office. So that, Honorable Speaker, when the previous act had the word statutory head, it made it seem like the Auditor General is being given a role to oversee a team, that there is a team there. But the Constitution recognizes an individual. Actually, the words of Article, I think it is 229, the words of that article are that there shall be an Auditor General. And that is the problem that the judge had with this particular section, as was then provided for. So the judge also has spoken to in addition to the functions and responsibilities of, in addition to the definition of the Office of Auditor General, the law already provides the functions and responsibilities of the Auditor General, so that you cannot bring legislation to try and purport to either add any functions on top of the ones that are in the Constitution, or in fact attempt to expand that definition of the functions and responsibilities of the Auditor General. So the first point of departure, Honorable Speaker, is that I do not see how the National Assembly replacing the words statutory head in the definition of the Auditor General and replacing it with what they are calling accounting officer will evade that constitutional trap that had been set in the previous act. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we will be saying that this particular amendment as proposed is not in conformance with the findings of the judge. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, there is a provision here in terms of the Auditor General's powers under Article 252(1). The Constitution is clear that each commission and each holder of an independent office shall recruit its own staff. Honorable Speaker, the judge says here, to that extent, therefore, and giving a holistic reading to Articles 229, 234, 249, 252, reveals that the Auditor General cannot be subject to the public service when either recruiting or disciplining his staff. In fact, Honorable Speaker, the Auditor General is given the role constitutionally to be able to come up with their own staff establishment. I have seen a proposal in this amendment here, Honorable Speaker, to create the office of somebody they are calling a Deputy Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, I will leave it to the constitutional scholars to advise us if indeed it is possible for you to create a deputy of a constitutional office outside the Constitution itself. And I have given the example, Honorable Speaker, of other constitutional offices. You will remember, for instance, there is a Chief Justice, and in that same Constitution, it provides for the Deputy Chief Justice. So the question I'm asking myself, is it possible for us to create an office for the Auditor General as Parliament, when he has been given the constitutional duty and mandate to actually have his own establishment, his own staff establishment, or her own staff establishment in the current case, so that they should be the one to decide that we need 2 deputies or 1 deputy? Can Parliament really abrogate themselves that responsibility of creating a staff establishment for the Auditor General? Honorable Speaker, the other issue that we have is the other problem that the judge raised with the previous provisions of the law was the question of the board. I think, just let me find the paragraph. Honorable Speaker, you will see that this particular amendment has tried to provide for something that they are calling an audit advisory board. Let me just find that particular provision. It's 17 here. 17 on the bill, amending section 25. This law proposes to establish an audit advisory board. And Honorable Speaker, you will see the proposed membership there. And then they are saying that the functions of that board are provided for, Honorable Speaker, at provision number 19, which seeks to amend Section 27 of the Act, that the subject to at Section 10 of this Act and upon approval by the Auditor General, the Audit Advisory Board shall generally be responsible for providing advisory on budget plans and estimates. You will see at B, it says human resource management and development, then any other matter that might be referred to the board. Speaker, this is what the judge said. That having an audit advisory board is an interference with the institutional and individual independence of the Office of the Auditor General. That it alters the constitutional architecture of the independent Office of the Auditor General and the principles of independence contemplated by the Constitution. It also violates Article 249(2)b, which states that he is an independent and not subject to direction or control of any person. There can be no doubt that the function of the Audit Advisory Board to advise the Auditor General in the performance of his functions under the Constitution violates the constitutional values and principles of independence of the Auditor General in Articles 229 and 2492. So, if indeed this bill was brought in order to conform with this decision of the High Court, my argument is that, Honourable Speaker, we needed to do away entirely with that Audit Advisory Board, because as the court has observed, Honourable Speaker, it interferes with his institutional and individual independence as an independent office in the Constitution. So therefore, Honourable Speaker, that particular section for me has to go. And I'm hoping that when we come to the Committee of the Whole at some point, we shall have amendments to this bill to align it properly with what is stated as the objective in the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons. So, Speaker, let me move to another issue that I wanted to raise with the bill. Not everything is doom and gloom, but because they expressed it as a bill to conform with this particular judgment, we have to make sure that it complies. Otherwise, it will suffer the same fate. Speaker, I am very happy. There's a provision there under Clause 26 of the bill that now grants the Auditor General independence in terms of initiating forensic or investigative audits. When people appear before us at the County Public Accounts Committee, sometimes, Honourable Speaker, we see a need for forensic audits, especially where there is grave suspicion that public money has been lost. The previous law was that forensic audit could only be initiated from a request by Parliament or from Parliament. So the Auditor General could not undertake forensic audit on their own. They had to get a request from Parliament and its committees for them to initiate that. What this is doing is that it is giving the auditor a free hand. So the new section there says the Auditor General may, on his or her initiative or upon request, conduct forensic or investigative audits. And the removal of the word Parliament after request opens it up, Honourable Speaker, to request from other agencies, not just Parliament, and that they can do it sui motu or on their own accord. Honourable Speaker, there is also provision under Clause 28 for the Auditor General to conduct compliance audits to examine whether a public entity has complied with relevant laws, regulations, and policies. That is important because it is not just about money and the financials. These are what we call compliance. Compliance audits are compliance with laws. And the best example I can give you, Honourable Speaker, is that I'm the SG of ODM. We also have compliance audits by the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. And the last one that was conducted on all political parties in Kenya, the report from the ORPP states that ODM is the only political party in Kenya fully compliant with all the laws that govern the operations of political parties. And I'm very proud of that, Honourable Speaker. I don't want to mention any other party. I can see the way the Speaker is looking at me. I might get into trouble. Honourable Speaker, at 38C there, it also provides that the Auditor General may conduct any other audit that she or he may deem necessary for the better carrying out of his function. So those are provisions that I find are going to be very, very useful. There is provisions of timelines at Clause 29, which proposes to amend Section 39 of the Principal Act, giving us 6 months after Parliament or the County Assembly has made recommendations. So, for instance, Speaker, we made recommendations here to county governments. And in fact, the process that we've been doing right now is to follow up on those recommendations. And Speaker, you will recall that we as a Senate had to pass a special motion for us to be able to continue to engage with these entities, for instance, the county governments, for them to give us follow-up on recommendations. Now here they have been given a period of 6 months that they have to, within those 6 months of the recommendations being passed, they shall submit a report to Parliament, now to us, on how it has addressed the recommendations of previous year's audit. And this is a matter that I believe is going to be helpful in terms of aiding transparency and the work that we do, both as a Senate and specifically as the County Public Accounts Committee and the PIC. Then, Honourable Speaker, another issue here is at Section 43, one of the issues that the public has really been raining on us, not just as the Public Accounts Committee, but also as a Senate, is that we make all these good recommendations, Honourable Speaker. They can see we are doing our oversight, Speaker. But then they ask, where is the output? Because we have struggled to explain to them that we also depend on other agencies for us to be able to bring, say, rogue governors to heel. You are aware that we had to summon the IG of police, for instance, before the Public Accounts Committee and ask him to give the assurance that if Senate wants or requires the presence of a specific governor, that his office is going to be able to deliver. Sifuna, as Senator of Nairobi, I have no powers of arrest. That's not to mean some of these governors, I don't have the desire to arrest. If I had those powers, Honourable Speaker, some of these people would be in jail. But we depend on other constitutional offices. So if you see clause 43 there, it says where the Auditor General establishes that any person, supplier or audited entity has been involved in fraud or corrupt practice, the Auditor General may collaborate with other investigative, enforcement, regulatory and oversight agencies, including the National Police Service, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, ODPP, and Public Procurement Administrative Review Board, and even the National Treasury for their action. This, I believe, is going to help us, Honourable Speaker, because previously the reports of the auditor just come to us as Parliament. Then we make those recommendations. This act now is giving the Auditor General a mandate of actually collaborating directly with these people. For instance, the collaboration with National Treasury, in my expectation, is the Auditor General should be able to tell them, the National Treasury, to stop funds going to entities that are found to have misused public funds, or to the Public Procurement Administrative Review Board. You can see there, Honourable Speaker, at subclause 2 of 43, that the Auditor General can actually make recommendations for debarment. Because in my time in the Public Accounts Committee, there are notorious companies that always show up. For instance, in the area of these systems for revenue collection, you will find one entity has brought problems in Nairobi. Then the next time you interact with NAROC, you find out that NAROC has actually given that same company the job of collecting revenue on their behalf. Then you will find them springing up somewhere in Murang'a, because previously we have not had the Auditor General's authority to be able to make these recommendations for debarment of some of these firms so that they stay away from public resources. Then, Mr. Speaker, I think those are the ones that I have identified as positives, but we will be hoping that we can have conversations about the negatives that I have pointed out, especially stemming from the judgment of the High Court, so that we actually align this act with the judgment. Our biggest fear, Honourable Speaker, as people sworn to defend the Constitution, is certain pronouncements, especially from people in executive authority, both at the national and county levels, castigating these independent offices. Speaker, we have had words being thrown by very senior individuals in this country, at Margaret Nyakango, for instance, at the Office of the Auditor General, at the Office of the Control of Budget. And we fear sometimes when we see such legislation, Honourable Speaker, that there could be a motive to either stifle the operations of that office, to cripple them, or to be able to control them for some reason. Because you will see, for instance, that advisory board, Honourable Speaker, one of the issues that was raised even in the petition and in the judgment is that it was very heavy with, national government officials. In fact, the court had a problem with the Attorney General being a member of that advisory committee because, as you know, the Office of the Attorney General is also subject to audit by the Office of the Auditor General. So we have reason to be skeptical because some of the headlines that we have been seeing coming from the Control of Budget are not very flattering to the executive. For instance, when we saw the reports on the Social Health Authority and the billions of shillings that she's pointing out, or Talanta Stadium, we have to be very careful, because we are sworn to defend the Constitution, that some of these amendments don't come or don't end up fettering on the independence of these offices.
Senator